my husband woke up one morning to the wolves going off. His eyes were still blurry. He had just woke up. The wolves woke him up. He looked out that side window at the wolves, and there was this big black figure back there. And my bear wolf, he was an easy 160 pounds. He was big, and he wanted to eat that thing. And my husband said he don't know if it saw him, the thing saw him through the window, or if it sensed him being there. It just got tired of the wolf going off at him, but it just did a 180 and walked and disappeared back into the woods. You know, I've had the wolves go off. I had 3 inside dogs. I had the inside the chickens, the guinea hens, the horses. We had nights where it was just bizarre. It wasn't pleasant. You know, the crazy thing is, we bought the place sight unseen.
Really?
Yeah. We were in Florida. We were both raised in Florida. And from Ocala, we moved over to, you know, originally we're from Pompano Beach area all the way down in South Florida, but we went from there to Orlando over to the Gulf Coast. We loved fishing, but it just wasn't our cup of tea with how congested it had gotten.
Yeah.
So like a couple people that we knew were from Arkansas, and one had just recently moved from the Tampa area to Arkansas. So they started sending me things, well, you know, you don't know where you're going, so check out these places. So it's just like, oh, cool. Yeah, you know, we could fit in with that. You know, we'd miss the saltwater fishing, but hey, you know, mountains, freshwater fishing, national forest.
Yeah.
We went for it. We bought it sight unseen. And it was a clash of 2 different worlds. Yeah, but it was cool. You know, we got in there at night, and it was just like, the move was crazy. We had a truck, a van. The truck was hauling a 1-horse trailer, a 4-horse stop trailer. The other truck was hauling another horse trailer with all our belongings in it. And we pulled in there at night. And I mean, it was bad weather. It was freezing. The wind was blowing. We had to move some trees out of the road to get up in there, you know, up in the mountains. And coyotes were going off, and it's just like, okay, it's a whole different ballgame.
What did we do?
But yeah, waking up the next morning was just drop dead gorgeous, because you could look out our front door and you could see Rich Mountain. At night, we used to be able to see the lodge up there, Lake Wilhelmina Lodge, the lodge, Lake Wilhelmina. So yeah, it was cool. And I'll tell you what, it didn't take long. I don't even think we were there for 2 or 3 weeks. And when you would walk from the kitchen into the living room, you had this big picture window that would face the horse paddock. But when you walked at an angle, you would see down into the valley. Oh, my husband's just like, he froze, and he's looking down there, and he's just like, get your jacket on. I'm like, what? He goes, get your jacket on. So, you know, I mean, he wouldn't talk to me. I mean, it's just, I don't know. And it's starting to rain. And he finally told me he had seen the back end of something, you know, all black, but it was just like the butt cheek.
Yeah.
All the way down. And he said it looked human. And I go, okay. And, you know, we would have weeks or months with nothing happening.
Sure.
And I think one of the funniest things that, well, it wasn't funny then, but we were doing the windows. And I gave my son the Windex and paper towels, and I said, go do your windows. So I'm in the kitchen doing the windows, and I hear him call me. He says, Mom, get in here. I says, what? He goes, just get in here. I'm like, what? And I'm doing, you know, how kids are, a teenager.
Right.
And he yelled for me, and he goes, there's a handprint on my window. I'm like, well, use the Windex and wipe it off. He's like, you don't understand, it's on the outside. Huh? And I walked in there, and I was just like, okay, I'm wiping on this, and it's just like, okay, yeah, it's on the outside. And the thing is that cabin was elevated off the ground. elevated. And I think when my husband measured it, I think the bottom of the handprint was 7 feet 4 inches off the ground.
Wow.
Yeah, and that handprint stayed there for years, the outside. And I believe it was, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, David Paulides. I had spoken to him at one of the Hanobia festivals, and my son himself was talking to him about the handprint. And he said, it's possible the reason it stayed there that long is it could have been sap, tree resin.
Yeah. That
were on the palms of the hand, possibly, or the oil. But yeah, that stayed there for years.
I mean, I know that now Doug Hychek is kind of leading the charge into this research about a possible waxy residue that they might have on their skin, and especially their hands. It's something that gorillas actually have. And
really?
Yeah, and like you're saying, there's a lot of situations where people have found handprints that they think might be from Bigfoot that leaves kind of this residue on a window or a car or something like that.
Waxy. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, they're actually in the process of trying to determine if they can pull any DNA from that waxy residue, because they can actually collect the waxy residue. They've collected some of it from different people. So now they're in the process of seeing, okay, well, can we actually pull DNA from this stuff? So it's interesting, that you mentioned that, and maybe the future will hold some new puzzle pieces for us.
Crazy thing is, I did take a piece of tape to see if I could lift any type of thermal.
Uh-huh.
I didn't think about saving that to collect what could have actually been on the window.
And all this stuff happened. You're no longer living at this property, correct?
Correct.
When was this happening?
We bought the property. I may be off by a year or two, but I believe we bought it in 2000. I believe we moved there December 8th, 2004.
Okay. So the early 2000s, we're talking close to 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Geez, don't even want to say that out loud.
I know, and dinosaurs ruled here.
Yeah. Let's talk about your trip down to the mailbox. That kind of got the ball rolling.
Oh, yeah. That horse, by the way, got slit. It actually looked like somebody took a machete and whacked him on his butt cheek. And that probably maybe happened 2 or 3 weeks after that happened. But, yeah, it was a clean. And that, if you're familiar with horses and fencing, that entire paddock was no climbs with hot wire. There was nothing in that paddock that could have done that.
Huh.
Walked out the door. I have to go past that paddock, but before I even got up to the paddock, I heard a loud clank, clank, clank. Okay. There shouldn't be anything clanking back there.
I mean, like a metal sound, like metal bang.
Metal on metal. Metal on metal.
And kind of just to set the setting for everyone listening, this is a mountain cabin out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I had nobody to the left of me for a long ways. The person to the north of me, probably 2 or 3 miles. I mean, behind me was all cattle fields.
So there should not be, nobody's out there working on their Buick or anything.
No, but it's interesting that you brought up a vehicle. Back behind that paddock on that next 20 acres, there's an old logging road. That when you're leaving the property and you go to the left, that old logging road is right there. That's still part of my property. And there is this old, maybe 57, 58 Chevy car laying on its hood. And that's where the old homestead was supposed to be back in the days. That was the only thing metal out there.
Was that the direction the sound was coming from?
Yeah, that was the only thing metal out there.
I mean, I can't think of anything that, what would be making that sound? Would something be like hitting that old car? And like, why would it be doing that?
Well, I always go to humans first before I...
Sure.
So we didn't own that property yet, but we were getting ready to put a contract on it. So I'm like, okay, somebody's messing around. I'm like, maybe it's a poacher. Maybe somebody's doing this. Maybe somebody's doing that. You know, concerned somebody might start a fire back in there.
Right.
So I went in the house and got the rifle. I went walking back in that direction, and a horse jerked ahead, caught motion, and I had this black thing running from the right to the left down into the valley. And it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen with the way it ran. I mean, it wasn't normal with the way the legs moved. And I don't understand how something could run like that fast with its arms back behind its back like that. And from the waist, there was no movement. I didn't see any bobbing of the head. It was smooth. You know, in my head, I'm thinking, is that a turkey flying? No. And it was actually thinner than the drawing I sent you. It kind of reminded me of a meerkat, which is the crazy thing.
Huh.
You know what a meerkat is?
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of. But with its chest bowed out, all black, and the way it moved its legs. I think the closest that I could come to explaining what it might have looked like is where I've read that some people say when they see them move, they have a ski movement.
Yeah.
Like somebody's skis. It really wasn't like that, but it was kind of like that.
Going by the description that you sent me and the drawing that you sent me, it was all black, uniform in color?
That's the only way I could explain it. Even though it was under the trees, we kept the trees lifted because horses were right there. So we had like a 20-foot mowed area, and then the trees behind that, for about maybe 40 feet in, we had the branches lifted, meaning that they were sawed off.
Okay.
So you could see everything back there. So it was still under shadow, but it was still very visible. So to me, I saw all black.
How tall was it?
It couldn't have been more than 4 feet tall. It couldn't have been. Especially when I used the horse wire. That horse wire, I think that was 46 inches, 42, 12, 24, 36, 48. I think it was like 42 or 40, and it was below that.
Running on two legs.
And
it's got its chest bowed out.
Yep.
And then its arms, this is the thing that just blows my mind. I've never heard a description like this. The arms were angled backwards.
Angled backwards. And the other thing is, my perception when I saw it, how can it run like that and not be looking where it's going and not face palm a tree? Because the chin looked as though it was tilted up. That's the only way I could explain my perception of what I saw. It wasn't a bear.
It was not a bear, for sure.
I don't know what it was. I don't.
We're talking about extremely, extremely rugged terrain.
Yeah.
And this thing is running downhill with its arms angled behind it while looking at an up angle, not even paying attention, really, not looking where it's headed.
Exactly. And if it came from where I think it may have came from, which would have been across the road down to the creek, it would have had to gone down and up some pretty wicked ravines. So I don't know. There's no way of knowing if it ran like that the whole way or it just went into that mode as it came to where the horses were. I have no idea. And I probably saw it for at least 2 or 4 seconds. And I'll tell you what, if you look at the timer on a watch, 2 or 4 seconds is pretty long.
Yeah. Seeing something like that, it's a lifetime.
Yeah. And I have looked at reports for so long now, still looking to see if I could find something similar. Now, the only thing I think I might have found similar to the body shape is an old report in LaFleur County, Oklahoma, where a gentleman was hunting and he saw one in a tree.
Was it running at the speed of like a person?
Oh, no. What I saw? Oh, no. No, this I'm going to sound like an idiot when I say this, but it's just like it was on jet fuel turbo. It's hard to explain. I know other people have seen them, so I don't have an issue talking about it. I don't. It's just trying to explain something that you've seen that nobody may have. So I'm a firm believer in saying that if you haven't experienced it, you can't understand it. You have to experience it to understand it.
After you see it, it goes out of view. Could you hear like the brush and stuff breaking as it ran, or was it quiet?
Oh, I'm going to go into something, again, weird. It was like a whoosh sound. Now, if you look at the picture that I drew, you can see where it's shaded up behind the back going up.
Mm-hmm.
This is stuck in my head. When I first saw it, I thought that might have been a tail going straight up. But I was watching something a couple of years ago, and it had an animal, I don't know if it was a jaguar or some kind of cat, running so fast that it was kicking up like a dust storm and a bunch of leaves or a bunch of, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's what I saw, thinking it was a tail. That's how fast it was moving.
Wow.
I never seen it again.
Just that one time in the whole time you lived there?
My son probably saw the same thing the same day. That's with the picture, that's the peekaboo.
Yeah.
That was the same day. I called my husband was working down in Texas or Mississippi, and I called him right away. And I was like, you're not going to believe what I just saw. Got my son, got the camcorder that wasn't charged, so that was worthless. And we started walking the road. And we walked all the way to the mailbox, and nothing happened. Once we got past that old logging road where that old car is on its hood, as we're walking back towards the cabin, it's whoosh, and we both said at the same time, that was a rock. I still have that first rock, but that wasn't the only rock. It probably happened 3 or 4 times. We got rocks chucked at us. And the wolves started going off. Now, the wolves are all the way back at the cabin on the other side of the back horse paddock. They were going nuts. And it was either me or my son started walking back up towards the cabin. But I remember looking at my son, and he was doing that over-exaggerated pointing.
Yeah.
So I started walking back to him, and that's when I'm thinking he sees something. And I kept my eye exactly where he was pointing, which was this big, huge oak tree. And I walked right up to it, looked behind it, and I mean, my heart was beating. I didn't know what was going to be behind that thing. And there was nothing there. There was absolutely nothing there. So I don't believe I looked up, which I should have. But that tree was so wide, it could have belly crawled in the opposite direction away from us. So we thought that was it. Okay, nothing. So walking back to the cabin, I open up my van to look for my gear bag with my battery charger for my camcorder, and my van got plastered with gravel.
While you're standing there?
While I'm standing there.
Wow. I mean, I would have probably jumped on my britches right then and there.
Uh-huh. I've been locked out of the house by accident when I've had something like that happened to me. Yeah, it's comical now, but it wasn't comical then.
No, I'm sure it wasn't.
There's just so many things that can chuck rocks.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'll tell you what vindication is, and you could edit this out if you want, because I don't know if I'm supposed to say anything or not, but the FRO was out at my place, and a couple things did happen, and we were all sitting around a campfire, and we had a rock get chucked from the valley where they had a cam set down in the direction where that critter ran. It came whooshing through the trees and landed right in our area, and everybody was like, "Oh, it's a rock, huh?" Yeah. And I think the cam went off a couple times, but nothing was on the cam. But that, to me, that's a vindication. At least, other people have experienced stuff there, so it wasn't just us. And their whole group was there, so there was nobody messing around in the woods.
Backing up for just a second, if you don't mind, describe what your son said he saw that day.
It stuck its head out at an angle. And I talked to him about it the other night because I don't want to put words in his mouth, because I told him I'd be talking to you about that. And I wanted to make sure. So it's not like it's a person would step out and then step back in, like play peekaboo like that. It was its head sideways and then behind the tree. And then the other side.
Leaning its head out.
Just the head. As far as I know, I asked him, "Do you remember seeing any hands?" He's like, "Ron, that's like 15, 20 years ago." I said, "I know, but I'm sure I've got all this stuff posted on that other website because I used to share everything."
Yeah.
But he did say the eyes were beady black. He said that's what his eyes were focused on, all black. And the interesting thing is I do a lot of Bigfoot artwork.
Uh-huh.
And just several times now when I've done the eyes, because I believe life is in the eyes when I do artwork, they say they need to be all black. That's how he remembers it, is all beady black eyes. Now, the only time I could have possibly seen some level of facial features was along the other dirt road, which was the old actual road that used to go through from one main paved road to another paved road that was shut off. And my van, we had a fence there and a lot of trees that separated, because then you had a drop down. So from our property down to that old road was a major drop down, anywhere from 3 feet to 6 feet. It dropped down. So you couldn't see. There's places you could stand in the yard and not see what's down there on that road. But I looked out the front window and I saw something next to my van. And it was very quick and it was black. But I did see a hint of lighter on what would be the face. My son saw that too. That was the only time the two of us saw one or something at the same time, where I could have possibly seen some level of what could have been a face, which would have been lighter than which was all black.
You mentioned a while ago your wolves started cutting up. Did you ever feel like they were maybe being focused on or being messed with or anything?
Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, my husband woke up one morning to the wolves going off. And he'll tell you, his eyes were still blurry. He had just woke up. The wolves woke him up. He looked out that side window at the wolves, and there was this big black figure back there. And my bear wolf, he was an easy 160 pounds. He was big, and he wanted to eat that thing. And my husband said he don't know if it saw him, the thing saw him through the window, or if it sensed him being there. It just got tired of the wolf going off at him, but it just did a 180 and walked and disappeared back into the woods.
You hear so many stories about, these things and dogs. It's really interesting that you had wolves and their reaction to these things.
It wasn't pleasant. I still haven't been able to find that longer vocal, but it actually, or I had that external mic hanging out from the recorder.
Uh-huh.
It was close to the wolf pen. And when those wolves went off, it was so loud it distorted their voices, their vocals. That's how loud it was. That's how loud they went off. You know, I've had the wolves go off. I had 3 inside dogs. I had the chickens, the guinea hens, the horses. We had nights where it was just bizarre. And it could have been a bear at times. You can't blame everything on these things.
Right.
You know, we had bear out there. We had packs of coyotes. I watched my stud horse chase a pack of coyotes out of his paddock. I mean, that wasn't unusual for that area, and I'm sure it's still not unusual now. It's still crazy back in there.
One of the interesting things in the photos you sent was a picture of a coyote with an apple in its mouth.
Uh-huh. I was doing a lot of research. I'm a researcher. I dig. For what other people have done, and I kept getting my apples stolen. They actually like the yellow apples better than they like the Granny Smith, the more expensive ones, than the red ones. And my apples kept so I figured, okay, this is getting expensive. But then again, my husband would get me free apples too, so that helped. So I tried something different to try and say, whatever's stealing my apples, I want them to stop and think. So I put a jar out in with the apple. I don't know if it was the jar just being something different. I don't know, but I got him. That was my apple stealer. I've done the same thing with hanging baits and getting possums and raccoons actually pulling the strings up to get to the food.
Yeah. My wife she saw somewhere on the internet, she gets pine cones and smears peanut butter on them and then puts bird seed on them and hangs them by thread in the trees for the birds. And the birds never get to them. The squirrels get them instantly. As soon as she walks inside the house, the squirrels run over there and pull that thread and just lift them right up to the limb and just chew through it and take off with it. Animals are not stupid. But I mean, I had never even, if somebody asked me yesterday, will a coyote eat an apple? No, absolutely not. And here you have photographic proof that a coyote has an apple in its mouth and is taken off with it.
Oh, just like, you gotta be kidding me.
But these are the things that are important, I think, because, people will leave food gifts out for Bigfoot. And whenever an apple disappears, your first instinct is to say, okay, well, what could carry off an apple?
Yeah.
Well, a coyote. A coyote will carry off an apple. Talk a little bit about the incident with the deer carcass.
Oh, that was my husband's underwear buck. Because we were having so much activity at one point, we actually went to Harbor Freight and bought a security system with the video and all that. And we had the main camera pointed down into the valley. And my husband saw, it was hunting season, he had a tag, saw the buck, stepped out the back door in his underwear and popped the buck. So he's been proud of that. That was an 8-point, by the way. But skinned it, wrapped it in cheesecloth, had a hose spraying on it all night long. And it was cold out, so we could do that. And it was hanging high. I've got pictures of it hanging from the rafter. And like I said, water was kept on it all night. And the next day he went out to check on it, and he came back in and he said, "Do you mess with the cheesecloth?" And I said, "No." And he went back out, and I looked out the window, and he's undoing the cheesecloth because he was going to go ahead and section it out. Came back in, he goes, "Come out here and look at this." I go, "Okay." And he's like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Looks like something taste tested it." And that was high. I mean, I've got a whole sequence of pics where I broke everything. One actually looks like a bicuspid, and that's not cut. That's a pressure mark. I don't know. You think, okay, why didn't I put a game cam on that? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? Same as now, my big lesson learned is if you're going to put cams out, don't put it on still shots. Put it on video.
Yeah. Hindsight, of course, but I don't want anybody to think you're claiming that like Bigfoot took a bite of this deer.
No.
It's just another thing to add to the pile of weird stuff that was taking place at this property.
Exactly. Weird. And you could go for months and nothing happens. Matter of fact, I do believe that was the last situation that happened before we moved. And we didn't move because of that. Anything. I mean, most likely, if it would have kept going, we probably wouldn't have moved, because it kept things spicy.
Did you ever have, like, anything slapping the side of the house or anything like that?
Oh, my gosh, yes. Oh, gosh, yes. Matter of fact, in my son's room, we were just talking about this the other night. His bedroom faced the valley. And he was sitting on his bed one night, and I was talking to him through the doorway. Something yanked on his air conditioning window unit. Yeah, we had all kinds of stuff happen there.
I mean, you mentioned rocks on the roof.
Oh, yeah. We had a big get-together, and it was a 2-story cabin. And somebody said, hey, do you know you got rocks on your roof? I'm like, huh? Oh, cool. Yeah, there was rocks up there on my 2-story roof.
I mean, how does that happen?
Yeah, exactly. What else happened to the house? Oh, I've only had really 2 real fear situations. I was in a sound sleep. I was sleeping on the recliner with my head against that picture window. And before I knew it, my son had my ankles and was literally dragging me off the couch to get my head away from the window. He said there was one looking at me right through the window. I did not see it. He did. And we didn't keep curtains on the windows where we lived. We didn't need to. But the other time, me and another researcher, we had hung a bait line from the fence where that actual old dirt road was, the original road, not the logging road, but the original road. So we had a bait line set up. Both had camcorders with the IR, and the bait line started bouncing up and down. Turned out it was a possum. So I went to rerun the line, turn the camcorders down, put the rifle down, walked up to that fence line where the land drops down to that old dirt road, and it sounded like a jet in the distance. Well, within seconds, that jet in the distance sounded like a 4-wheeler, and then in a couple seconds, that 4-wheeler turned into a growl, and it was just like we got bluff charged. That is the first time, I have to admit, I ever screamed, I screamed, run. I was terrified.
That's interesting that you're talking about, the sound of the growl and how it builds like that. I'll never forget, and it's so hard to describe to people, but like the growl I heard, and again, I did not see what was making the growl.
Right.
But it sounded like the only thing I could compare it to is I'm from the city and I live pretty close to an expressway. And to me, it sounded like a big diesel truck, like a semi truck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's that type of volume and that low rumble, and your brain just starts trying to equate the sound of things you've heard, because it does not sound like a dog growling or anything. It doesn't sound like a bear growling. It's way louder than that.
Yeah, your brain is trying to trigger in, what is it?
Yeah.
What does that connect to? So in the distance, I connected to a jet engine. Then the 4-wheeler, no, that's a growl. So yeah, And you do feel it. You do. It rumbles in you.
Anybody that's been around this thing long enough, if they're worth their salt, they've seen a certain photo. And this photo came from you.
Yeah.
Only most people see an altered version of the photo.
Exactly.
But let's talk about the photo. What's the story behind the famous photo?
The pic from hell. All right. So where that little critter, whatever it is, where it's sitting or whatever it's doing, you see the telephone pole behind there, right?
Yeah.
Well, right behind that telephone pole is where that road drops down. You can't see what's down there unless you walk up to it. Now, to the left was a 3-stall shop. The one all the way to the left used to be my feed room. It was open air, meaning it was open in the front but closed in on 3 sides.
Yeah.
The middle shop, the further end, I used to put, spare hay and all that stuff in there. But my chickens, I had free-ranging chickens, would still go in there and lay their eggs in there. And that's where we used to gather the eggs. I used to get 1, 2 dozen, sometimes more a day when it's laying season from all those chickens. My eggs all started disappearing. Nothing, not even a drip of yolk. And my husband started walking around. He's like, okay, we're going to find out where the raccoons are or the possums or whatever's taking the eggs. So he saw where there was a little trail, game trail, going down alongside that power pole, down to the road and across the road down to where the creek goes, which the creek was about a 1/4 mile away. So that's where we set the cam up to catch a raccoon or whatever that was stealing eggs, and that's what we got.
What do you think it is?
I'll tell you what, I've done a lot of work on it, and I've held back on putting it back out there.
Yeah.
And maybe in maybe a month or 2, I'll put it out there because there is a whole bunch of paranoia going on in there. Things that you believe you see is just matrixing of the reeds. You think you see a bird? It's not a bird. There's things going on in there that don't make any sense. I don't know what it is. Now, what I did do to that is I cropped it and I took away the hue, contrast. I was only working what was already there, taking away, making dark what was already there. And I'm OCD when it comes to asymmetrical stuff because I'm an artist.
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing things that were asymmetrical that if it was pareidolia, it didn't make sense because eyes, nostrils, what appears to, it doesn't make any sense. So I would like to do I did a complete breakdown on everything. And I think it needs to be looked at one section at a time and just let people slice and dice it. That's what happened in the beginning, but it's been jacked so many times. The little caveman face has been put on it.
Right.
It ended up on a Arkansas hunting forum where a guy claimed it as his own and telling people how high he had the cam off the ground. I'm like, hi, hello, glad you like it.
Years ago, I kind of worked behind the scenes with another podcast, just helping out. And it was whenever I really first, I had a few years under my belt in the field research side and, it was pretty big on myself and just, I wanted to try and create a vocalization that I had heard out in the field that I didn't record. And I just, kicked myself in the butt over not having it recorded. And I was messing around with some audio stuff and I wanted to see if I could recreate what I had heard. And I couldn't get it exact, but I got something pretty similar. I created it 100% on my computer. It was not an animal of any kind. And I posted it on the internet, in all the different Bigfoot forums and stuff for other people to use as a comparison to maybe what they heard out in the field.
Exactly.
And last year, I think it was, maybe the year before, I found it on another video. And it's been, we're still talking the same time frame. It's been close to 20 years since I made that audio.
Yeah.
And people are currently using it in TikTok videos and other videos and going viral. There was one video in specific that it was used for a hoax. It was supposedly a mushroom hunter. And this video even made it to like a television show, was like featured on the History Channel. And it's my audio that I created on my computer. And this jackass is just, he's got a whole story behind it. He was out mushroom hunting and this whole thing. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? And like every few months, another new video will pop up with that audio that I created all those years ago with a new story behind it. So I understand exactly what you're saying with the picture.
It's sad, because that's why you stop. Well, at least for me, that's one of the reasons I stopped sharing. Why even bother?
Yeah. Your photo, I have seen the original photo without it being doctored. And I don't have any idea what's in the photo. It's a very interesting photo.
Well, there's 6 in the series.
The edited version where somebody, added the face to it and everything. I mean, I would say at this point, that's a famous Bigfoot photo.
It looks better than the original.
Well, sure, because it shows what everybody wants to see, That's what everybody's waiting on, is to see a photo or a video of Bigfoot.
True.
Just unfortunately, the vast majority of stuff I've seen out there is not photos or videos of Bigfoot. They are usually hoaxes or misidentifications that people just add a story to and run with it.
And now we got to worry about AI.
Yeah. Which is popping up everywhere. And
yes, sir.
If people don't get on their toes and learn how to recognize it, you're in for a world of hurt. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
Another thing that I wanted to mention that I wanted to talk to you about, you talked about some of the attention that you got over the years for the activity happening on your property. I imagine the photo has something to do with it as well. You had actual images to back this up of a mystery vehicle that showed up at your property?
Oh, that's not the first time. Oh, I've got them on video. I just haven't put it out there. But I will share it with people if they think they could ID him. Even though it's going back that far, that's a dirty pool. To have your tag, to me, that's where somebody took electrical tape. That wasn't just black. To me, that's black electrical tape.
Yeah, that's something physical on the tag.
People knew I was doing a lot of game cam work.
I mean, just a quick description. This is like a pickup truck that you don't recognize, obviously, that you got on camera that was sitting at your property for an extended period of time.
Almost an hour.
Like they were observing you. I don't know what else they were doing. And they have literally taken something, probably electrical tape, like you're saying, and covered up their license plate with it, which was also captured on camera.
Yes, sir. And they're not the only ones.
I mean, that's scary.
Yes, it was, especially because I would be there alone for months at a time.
Jeez.
And I used to fire off a lot. And I did that because, hey, there's somebody back here. Whether they knew it or not, there's somebody back here. You wouldn't know there was anybody living back where we lived. And I've hit the ground in the house, hit the floor, because I had gunshots close. I've had spotlights at night showing from the front woods into my kitchen window. It wasn't pleasant at times. I think we had game and fish out there 2 or 3 times at night because we had a lot of shooting going on the property. Yeah, we were on 26 acres, but we had national forest on 2 sides of us. So it's kind of hard to track people down when you have trespassers or poachers or who knows who they are.
Yeah.
You know, you can only do as good as you can do. And we only had one gentleman who had open season on the property. He was Old Man Allen. He was a retired Navy SEAL, and we gave him his own area where he could hunt, and he put up a hard blind, and he had his cams out there, and he used to hunt. Happy man when he got a hog out there. Never got his deer, but he came up to the house one day and thought he was going to show me some more deer and hog pics from the cam, but instead he goes, "Do you know who this is?" I'm like, "No." There's this guy who was posing right in front of this camera, looking right at the camera, posing with his hand on his sidearm.
I mean, do you think these were like poachers?
I don't know who they were, but you don't poach with a sidearm.
No, you don't.
The other guys in the truck, I have no idea. Now, I will say this about the guys in the truck. Maybe a day, maybe 2 or 3 days prior to that pic ended up on another website. And somebody had contacted me and said, "Guess what? It's back." And they let me know where it was. And I went back in there and I claimed it. You know, you could find anybody on the internet. I never made any, I used to post as paint horse, but I never made any, it was never any secret who I really was or where I lived. And, yeah, that happened with those guys in the truck like 2 or 3 days after that.
I mean, I'll just ask you point blank, do you think any of it was connected to the Bigfoot activity?
It's possible. It is possible. I don't know who those people were. They could have gotten hurt. They could have gotten real hurt.
So whenever I hear these stories and, like, you know, you send me those pictures, it's not only just how scary it was for you, but the kind of person that would, I mean, literally risk their lives. What were they doing? They know better than to be doing that. Traipsing around on somebody's private property in the middle of the night and shining spotlights and stuff, that's how you get killed. So whatever they were up to, apparently they thought it was worth the threat. Well,
it was never worth anything to me but a headache. But it was fun. Everybody needs a good fear rush every now and then.
Did you ever see any, like, I have to ask, like orbs or anything like that?
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Orange. Visual. Not just in the pics, but visual. Floating orbs. Orange. My son, out his window one night, he still talks about it. He still describes it as a Star Wars scene. Oh yeah, we saw crazy stuff there. I got quite a bit of stuff on video. I've got so much stuff on video, on old CDs and everything. Yeah, I got quite a bit of strange stuff. But that's life. I mean, not everything in life is black and white. I mean, there's some room for color in there, you know, and it's okay to have an open mind about things as long as it's not so open your brains fall out. So I stay open, but it doesn't mean that I'm into it or believe everything, but I'll think about it.
Has your position changed any about Bigfoot over the years?
That they're flesh and blood? No. I can't do romance. I can't do woo. I'm an empath, and I don't believe in, I mean, this is just me. I don't believe in the mind speak. I just don't. Other people do, but that's okay. I'm going to do me. They could do them.
But you never experienced anything like that personally?
No, but I know people talk about getting zapped.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I want to use the term zapped, but I know I keep bringing it up. But where the old Chevy is, that was one place on the property you would get a bit disoriented. You knew where you were. It was just like, okay, which way do I turn to get back on the path, even though the path was right there? That happened to several people.
Huh.
It's almost a sense of feeling lightheaded.
Yeah.
And disoriented. Not every time, but there was something odd about that little area.
I wonder if they could have been using that old Chevy.
I don't know. I do know that's the only thing out there that could have made those clank sounds, because we went back out there and we banged on it a bit. Nothing ever came back and did it again, but it was the sound that I heard.
It was the same sound?
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't just the car. There were old springs there, old shocks. I mean, old parts of springs, springs from the tires. So, yeah, there was a lot of stuff there you could beat on. Now, if that was connected to what slipped my horse, I have no idea.
Was that the only time an animal was injured on the property?
Yes, sir. Yep, that was the only time.
Crazy stuff.
It was.
Crazy stuff.
It was. And I hope I end up on another property like that. Yeah, it's gotten a little bit bored here living on the highway, so I'm ready to go feral again.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with me.
Well, Mr. Matt, you've been a pleasure, sweetheart, and it's been fun.
If you've encountered a Bigfoot, a dogman, a ghost, a UFO, or anything else you can't explain, send me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. If you get a chance, check out my website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find past episodes, merchandise, links to the social media, everything you need all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.